Hello and welcome to another episode of our Brothers Creed podcast, where we talk about motivation, experiences, and exploring the world around us. We're the Thomas Brothers, and I'm Jared.
And I'm Ethan. And today we have a great topic for you. We're going to be talking about self-discipline and self-mastery. So we're going to talk a little bit about some definitions behind what those mean, why they're important. We're going to dive into how we can develop those more in our life and what effect that potentially will have on us.
Massive effect.
I think it will.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, so let's do it.
You can't climb the ladder of success with your hands in a pocket.
We will not go quietly into the night.
They tell me you're a man with true grit.
I am the one who knocks.
Don't ever tell me what I can't do, ever!
That's how winning is done.
So self-mastery and self-discipline, I feel like those are kind of used interchangeably. I feel as though they're the same thing. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they're very close. When looking up definitions of the two, self-mastery just went. I kept finding the self-control. Self-mastery just kept going with self-control. Discipline, self-discipline. I kind of found some varying topics, but really, whenever I kind of tied them together, it was basically saying the same thing.
So self-mastery, or to master, or to become a master of one's self. Now, like a master is like, sometimes when we think of master, we think of like a slave owner or like someone who directs the actions of somebody else. So if you are able to direct your own actions and not be at the whim of any emotions or distractions, and you're able to be disciplined in the way that you approach your life, that is what mastery, self-mastery, and self-discipline is about.
One of the definitions just for discipline in itself, it says discipline is an action or inaction that is regulated to be in accordance with a particular system of governance. So I thought it was interesting because it said self-discipline is action or potentially inaction.
Yeah.
Not doing something is
not raising your hand to punch the guy who deserves to get punched, but having that restraint or something like that.
Not doing something is potentially discipline as well. And the ability to control one's feelings and overcome one's weaknesses is kind of to me was, what else to say? So the ability to pursue what one thinks is right despite temptations or kind of like external situations.
Yeah. One of the definitions that I saw was the ability to control one's feelings and overcome one's weaknesses. Yeah. And then at the same time, the ability to pursue what one thinks is right despite the temptation to abandon it. So there's always going to be temptations to abandon what you think is right, or what, if you think, being faithful to my wife is right, and I'm committed to that, then if some temptress, some Jolene comes up to you and she's trying to tempt you, from Dolly Parton's song, Jolene, you have to have that discipline to maintain the course without being tempted to abandon that aspect of discipline or self-mastery.
Control your feelings or be able to overcome your weaknesses.
Yeah. Discipline is doing what you know needs to be done even though you don't want to do it. So that's sometimes maybe a little bit more in the minutia of our lives. Like, I know I need to brush my teeth at night, but sometimes I don't feel like doing it. Sometimes, you ever sidetrack? You ever sitting on the couch and you're just having a long day and you're just so exhausted and you're like, the process to go to bed is so long that I just am too tired to even do it.
No, man, I can brush my teeth in 30 seconds flat and I'll be sleeping in a minute.
Really? Because I always, we got to get stuff together. We got to go upstairs and then, brush my teeth. I got to floss. You got to floss.
Of course.
And then.
That adds an extra 30 seconds.
And then, so that's a minute. And then you got to turn on the bright lights of the bathroom and you're like, ah. And then you're just, I got to go to the bathroom because you don't want to be waking up in an hour to go to the bathroom. And then you got to lay down. After all that, it's 10 minutes later. Not 10 minutes, but still, I feel like if I'm laying chilling on the couch and I do all that, then I'm not as tired as I was earlier.
Yeah, I was. This is really interesting. As I was doing some research on this, it was talking about how, and it used the word evolution, but it was kind of saying that basically the human brain has evolved to be lazy because it basically our whole goal in life is to conserve energy.
Yeah.
And it was comparing that to kind of this self-discipline and being regimented in what you're doing. It can kind of, I don't know, our body, a lot of times it says it's always in like safety mode, right? We're always like storing fat for a rainy day, or we're always, doing these other things. Our body is always constantly trying to conserve energy. And so just naturally we want to just kind of lay on the couch and conserve energy. And it was kind of talking about how it's human nature. We need to like almost fight against that urge to store energy and kind of just be lazy potentially.
It's never more apparent than on your 9th rep of squats. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't do this last rep.
Yeah. Or the day after you do those squats.
Oh yeah.
Like
the other day we went to we did a lot of Olympic lifts at the gym, and like we did snatches and we did squats and like overhead press, and the 2 days, it really hits you 2 days after.
Yeah.
I was absolutely,
when you're walking down the stairs.
Oh, just totally, I couldn't hardly move, and I'm just like rolling over barely in bed. I'm like, I can't move. I feel like I've been hit by a truck.
I was watching this documentary on bodybuilding, and this one guy, I can't remember who it was they were talking to. Basically, he was like, I've been bodybuilding for like 30 years now. And he goes, I cannot remember a day in my life like that I wasn't sore.
Really?
Yeah. He was like, because he works out, a couple hours a day, twice a day.
Wow.
Every single day. And he's just like, even though obviously he's on steroids and that helps you to recover, but he's just like, I'm sore all the time. I've been sore every day for the past 30 years. Dude, that's a miserable existence.
Well, yeah, that's tough, man. You got to have rest days in there.
Yeah.
But back to the topic of self-mastery. I think that there's one story that I'd like to share that I think illustrates, and I think I've shared this before. Sometimes I get confused of what I've shared giving talks in church, what I've shared just with people in general, or what I've shared on the podcast. So if I've shared this on the podcast before, this is a twofer.
When you hit over 40 episodes, you're just like, there's just so much information out there.
Oh, yeah. It's just like unbelievable. So there's a famous Cherokee legend about the battle between two wolves. So the story goes that an old Cherokee is teaching his grandson about life. A fight, he says, "A fight is going on inside me," he said to the boy. "It is a terrible fight, and it is between two wolves. One is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego." That's a lot of bad things. He continued, the other is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is going on inside you and inside every other person too. The grandson thought about it for a minute, and then he asked his grandfather, well, which wolf will win? And the old Cherokee simply replied, the one you feed. So the moral of that story is that there are two, you could call it the natural man versus your spiritual self, or you could call it the two wolves in your brain, or the good versus evil, yin versus yang. Really, maybe not yin versus yang, because yin versus yang is more about a balance of all things. But really, there's like a good and an evil in each of us, and discipline and self-mastery is having the ability to say, I'm choosing what I want to do. I'm choosing what wolf I want to feed. And really, everything matters, and we're either feeding virtue or we're feeding vice. And that is how you develop that self-mastery, is by feeding whichever wolf you want to reap the fruits of.
Yeah, I think it's a decision, right? It makes me think of the quote that says, the man that says he can and the man that says he cannot are both right.
Yep.
And so it's just kind of like you make that mental decision of this is who I'm going to feed, and you attack it, or you go on and you move towards it. So,
yeah,
okay.
absolutely. So I kind of like that analogy of the two wolves inside us. And if you think about all those terrible things and all the good things, you have the ability to choose that, and we're not just at the whim of external forces. That's what's so empowering about self-discipline, self-mastery, is that you get to control who you are. You get to control how you react to people's things. You don't let circumstances dictate how your emotions are or how you react to things.
Yeah. There's 4 components mainly to self-discipline, and I'm sure there's more, but 4 components I liked was self-control, motivation, persistence, and goals. Those were 4 components that, when all stitched together, can formulate that the potential of self-mastery and let's say accurate or good self-discipline.
Yeah, I like that. In fact, those 4, so you said it's self-control, motivation,
persistence, and goals.
I have a clip that I want to share. This is from Dr. John DeMartini, and he talks actually about those different things. And I like this. This is more about the question of finding your why or what your purpose is, but it also kind of goes back into goals. It goes back into how you're. He talks about motivation a little bit, and it kind of all goes back into how to have that discipline and self-control. So I'm going to play this clip here. This is from an interview. I'm going to start it when he's answering the question, but basically the interviewer asked the question about motivation and what that means to him.
So those of you listening, you'll be able to hear the clip. If you want to see it, it'll be on our. You can watch us on YouTube, and we'll transition over to the clip as well.
Yep. All right, let's get started.
Well, the difference between my teachings and motivational teachings, because I have different differences in there. When a person, because everybody has a set of priorities, a set of values in their life, whenever they're living by their highest value, which the ancient Greeks called the telos, which is the highest priority in their life, the chief aim, as Napoleon Hill called it, or Ed Ellison called it the magnificent obsession, or the big why. That highest value is the most meaningful and most purposeful thing they can do. That is the purpose. When you do, you're the most resilient, most adaptable to pain and pleasure. When you go down the list of values to lower values, you're less inspired, less fulfilled by doing them. You procrastinate in doing them. And what happens is you'll only do them if it's pleasurable, and if it's not, you'll give up. So the key is to make sure that everything you do is highest priority, the thing that's most meaningful to you, so you don't give up, you have the resilience, and you embrace pain and pleasure in the pursuit of a great purpose. If you are not living by your highest values, because you're wanting to do it with pleasure only and you'll want to give up if it's pain, you'll need motivation all the time. The difference between inspiration, which is from within, is people who are inspired from within are living by their highest values. And people that need motivation from without are people that haven't found that highest value and are living by lower values, and they need constant incentives and motivation and only pleasure to keep them going. So I'm not a motivational speaker, and I don't promote motivation because I think motivation is a symptom more than a solution. Finding out what's highest on a person's values, finding out what inspires them from within, transcends the need for motivation.
So I thought that was really cool what he said. He talked about the difference between inspiration coming from within, aligning the things that you're doing with your why, your main purpose, and that is going to keep you going. That's what's going to keep you resilient. Versus external motivation. If you have, like lower priorities on your why list, if you're only going to, say, church just because you want to keep up appearances, that's a very low reason to go to church. And so whenever, so you're not going to do that. You're not going to put very much effort into that. You're going to need lots of motivation to continue to go into church, external motivation, because it's not coming intrinsically from within you. Now, if you are like, for example, I myself am so passionate, I have a faith, and this is my why is so that I can lead my family to God, then you're going to have more of a passion and more of an intrinsic to do that, and you're going to be more resilient when you don't want to go to church. You're not going to need external motivation. So I thought that was a great thing. Earlier in the interview, he talked about how at a lot of employers, sometimes people just they do their work and they have very low level goals or motivations, like low level goals. For example, I want to keep my job. Well, they're only going to do as much as they need to keep their job. And so he talks about how if you can align your goals, the work that you do with your primary goal in life, that top one, that why or the primary purpose, then you will find that that resiliency and that self-discipline to do it. You don't constantly need to keep being motivated. And so, very powerful.
Yeah, that inspiration versus motivation. I like that. Yeah. A lot of people are, we're talking about, finding that, what's your motivation or what's your inspiration? Not what's your motivation. It's almost like what's your inspiration, right? And it's really interesting. That could be lots of different things. You shared the example of church. It could be money. You talked about, people at work. It's like, well, if your motivation is low, then or your inspiration, you haven't found that highest inspiration, then basically you're running on what other people can give you. It's almost like you're running on someone else's gas.
Like
right?
If you're making money just to look good, dude, you're sunk in the water. Because as soon as people stop giving you credit, and you have no reason to continue.
Yeah, it's like I was listening to a thing the other day, and they were talking about minimum wage, and somebody was like, minimum wage. You know what minimum wage gets you? Minimum effort. And it's just like it kind of went into this different things.
What's interesting is, I saw this thing that I thought was actually pretty interesting. I saw this thing on TikTok. We're on TikTok, by the way. We have an account on TikTok, so sometimes I'm on there just kind of browsing. And there was this girl that said, this is going to be controversial, and I'm going to say this anyway. And she's like, she works in retail, and she's like, when I have baby boomers that work with me in retail, and this girl looked like she was in her 30s or something. She's like, whenever I have baby boomers that work with me, they are the most problem employees that I've ever had. She's like, they're always late, they're always wanting exceptions, they always think that we're entitled and all this kind of stuff. And she's like, I work with a bunch of teenage girls, and they are way easier to get along with than these boomers. I'm like, well, you have to think who you're working with, though. If a teenage girl is working in retail, she's probably young, she's at the beginning of her career or beginning of her life, and this may be a summer job or a college job, and maybe down the road, she's not going to be working in retail. But if you're a baby boomer and you're in retail, like working the floor at Kohl's, maybe there's a reason why you're working at a retail floor on Kohl's. Maybe you've had difficulty finding employment elsewhere. So I thought that was kind of an interesting aspect to it. Thinking about the different generations,
Yeah. So why is this? Why is self-discipline important? So there's a quote here. It says, self-discipline allows you to stay focused on your goals. It enables you to stay in control of yourself and of your reactions in any situation. I really like that because it is the path by which you can accomplish your goals, right? If your goal is to become an Olympic weightlifter, and then you're faced with this choice. Am I going to get up in the morning and go work out? Or in the evening or whatever? Am I going to go work out, do something that's hard? Or am I going to choose to sit on the couch and not do that? Am I going to procrastinate all the way up until the Olympics or up until qualification day and then try to squeeze it all in the last minute? So that self-discipline allows you to stay focused on your goals. It creates the opportunity for you to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. A lack of self-motivation can cause low self-esteem because it's definitely happened to me before. I'm like, I want to, for example, personal example, right? So, in 2020 or in 19, I don't know. I get on
last year.
I get all my years confused now, but a couple years ago, if not last year, I really wanted to my goal was to do a triathlon. This was last year.
Yeah, that was last year.
And my goal was like, I'm going to do a triathlon. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I was motivated. I got got all the stuff I needed, and I kind of got all my plan together. And then, I kind of trained a little bit here and there, but it was getting hard, and COVID hit, and all this other kind of stuff, and they canceled a lot of all the events. And I kind of got to a point where I was almost relieved that they canceled the events, because I was like, man, I told everybody that I was going to do a triathlon, and I did. I made all of these decisions along the way that could I maybe have like done a short one, just like bared my way through it. Yeah, probably really slowly, but I could have done it. But it was almost like that lack of self-discipline almost like made me ashamed. I was like, oh, dang, people would ask me, how's the triathlon training coming? I'd be like, oh, it's good. It's coming good, going good. But really it was like, I'm dying, it's like I'm making decisions that I shouldn't be making. My self-discipline is not there. It's not keeping me focused on my goal. And so there was so many times where I had to kind of reassess, right? I cheated on this, cheated on diet, cheated on training, and I'm like, dang, okay, well, I need to reassess. I need to come back to it. I need to reassess and come back to it. And so my goal of a triathlon is still there, and it's taken longer than I had expected, but it's just kind of that. I mean, this is why we do this stuff, so that not only that you guys listening can improve your own self-discipline and self-mastery, but so that we can as well.
Yep.
What is my inspiration? Why do I want to do a triathlon? If I can find my why there, then it might potentially inspire me to.
If your why is simply as so I'm not embarrassed in front of other people, that's such a low level
That's not going to do it.
Low level goal or incentive. You've got to have something deeper. True health, or proving to myself that I can. That's a higher level one.
Yeah.
I think that 2020 was hard on a lot of people. 2020 was hard. I gained weight in 2020. Then at the kind of towards the tail end of 2020, around October, I was like, I'm sick of like being over. I was heavy, man. I was like,
I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah, I could hardly. I was like, heck, I wore sweatpants most of 2020. And then I was like, towards the end, like October of 2020, I was like, okay, I'm going to try to like fit back into my winter pants. And I realized I don't fit in these pants anymore. And like the only thing I fit in is these giant shorts. So I really dedicated myself to working out and exercising, eating clean. And, we, at the beginning of this year, we did a challenge to everybody to eat healthy, to do their daily journaling, to do their gratitude journal, to write down the things that they are that they want to accomplish that day. And I've been doing that, man. I've been reading. I've been improving myself. I've been reading books. I've been working out almost every single day. I have rest days on the weekends, and I've seen massive changes. And I'm actually at this point I've actually started to put on weight. I started at I started at 210, and then I got down to then I got down to 190. That was my goal. And then now I'm back up to 197, and it's mostly coming back up as being mostly muscle.
Yeah.
So it's good to kind of see that progress and that effort.
That's awesome. One thing for me that I always like to do when I'm trying to learn about a topic is I try to look into what it isn't, right? So what is self-discipline, and then what isn't self-discipline, or what is it not? What is the opposite of it? And one of the things that I had come across is it says, so like I said, in order to understand self-discipline, you have to understand what it isn't. It is not about becoming superhuman, or it says it's not about becoming a superhuman productivity machine that never fails. It's not about beating yourself up because you didn't achieve more than you did yesterday. It's not about expecting that you'll never be tempted to sleep in, eat cake, or scroll through Facebook. It's not rigid. and inflexible. It doesn't mean holding yourself to an impossible standard. So I always tell, this is kind of like one of my mantras in life is try to do better yesterday than I did today. That is something that I've always tried to do. If I mess up or I'm impatient with the kids or I'm am lazy in a day or whatever else, if I decide to sleep in or something. So my goal is, okay, tomorrow I'm going to do better than I did yesterday. So maybe I'm going to mentally, actively say, okay, yesterday I was impatient and I yelled at the kids. So today it's on the top of my mind. I'm not going to do that. And if we cheat, if we slip, then it's okay. Just reassess your situation and overcome that. And then the next hour or the next day, have that same mentality. I'm going to do better today than I did yesterday. And then
But you have to remind yourself of that every day.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And that's why at the beginning of the year we talked about reminding yourself of your goals. Write down those same 5 goals every single day. Because if you don't remind yourself, today I'm going to do better, then you don't have that on top of it, then you're not thinking about doing better. Or you're not thinking about doing good. Maybe not necessarily I'm going to do better than yesterday. Because then that I think that takes on maybe a perfectionist attitude. Maybe it's just today I'm going to do good. Today, and by good, that means... What that means is, when I say that, really what I'm meaning is, today I'm going to be disciplined and strive towards the goals that I have.
Yeah, I like that. So,
because if you're always doing better than yesterday, eventually you have a perfect day, right? And then every day after that perfect day, you're bad, right? So that's a perfectionist mentality that I think that, not to say that your thing is wrong. I think I understand what you're saying, but every day striving for your goals anew is what I think you're saying.
Yeah, every day is a reset.
Yeah,
I guess with it, And I don't think we'll ever have a perfect day, but you could have really good days, and then it can fluctuate. But just reassessing every single day, your mindset, I think, is huge. Getting yourself in that mindset. So, a couple of concepts or strategies, some mindset shifts that we were just talking about that we can do to help build self-discipline in our lives. I'll just read some of these off. So, challenge your own excuses. So, if you have the excuse of, I don't know, we want to do this podcast, right? And then it's like, oh, but whenever I get home from work at 5:30, 6 o'clock, I'm just so tired, and I just so tired, I don't have time for it. And then it's just like, well, that's an excuse. You don't have time for it because you're not making time for it. Or
I don't have time to research all this stuff. Or
yeah,
why does anybody want to hear what I have to say? Or we live across town from each other. Or
so
it's going to cost money. Or all these different things.
Challenge your own excuses.
Yep.
Those are my excuses, and say, why am I saying that? Why am I saying, oh, I just want to sit here and watch TV? Sometimes you can just sit there and watch TV, but just challenge. Why am I saying that to myself? Why am I telling that excuse to myself? If your buddy was there and saying, well, dude, you want to start a podcast? Why don't you just do your podcast? And you're like, oh, well, you give him some lame excuse. And your buddy would say, dude, that's a freaking lame excuse. Don't give me that crap.
Well, I think a lot of times by challenging the excuses, you get to the root of the excuse, and you're like, well, actually, the reason why I don't do this is because I'm afraid to fail.
Yeah. Or it's because I'm really not that interested in it. And so maybe you need to find something else. I mean, not that I'm not interested in podcasts, but I'm just saying, it's like maybe you just need to reassess what you actually really want.
Yep.
Next one, delayed gratification. You don't always get what you want when you want it.
Yep.
That's important. Making choices in advance. So saying, this is who I am. I am an early riser. I go to the gym. I pay for my gym membership. I go to the gym every morning. I get there at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. I work out for an hour. This is my routine. This is what I'm going to do. All those decisions, all those choices are made in advance. This is what I'm going to have for breakfast. Is making choices in advance, setting yourself up for success is good. Removing temptation. If you are a sugar fiend and you're trying to lose weight, then maybe you shouldn't have your cabinets full of sugary stuff. Right? Remove the temptation.
Yeah.
Don't give yourself easy access to it. Consistent small habits, forming good habits. Focus on. A focus is a muscle. I actually watched a TED Talk on this where the guy talks about focus and how you can train yourself, just like a muscle, to be more focused. And it was really interesting. Talked about how focus is a muscle, and that you can build it, and you can strengthen it, and you can make it so that you can maintain focus for longer. The more you actually treat it like an exercise. I'm going to focus for 5 minutes, and then you sit there and you focus just 100% for 5 minutes, and then maybe the next time you do it, okay, I'm going to focus for 7 minutes or whatever, and just kind of do reps to build that focus. Nutrition, sleep, exercise are always important on giving you confidence, building your self-confidence.
Fasting can also help. Like, taking a break from eating food for maybe a meal or two, or even for a full day, and just saying like, I'm in control of my body, and like just kind of reminding your body who's in control and that you are in control. Your mind is in control, and so that can be good as well.
Yeah,
that's what Christ fasted for 40 days.
Yeah.
And that's a common practice in the Christian world, is to do that, even outside the Christian world, I think, too.
Yeah, it's almost like a reset, right? It just trains you in doing something that I bet you someone who has never fasted before, and then you ask them to fast for 24 hours, they're going to be like, oh, this is so hard. But someone who is used to it, it's really not that big a deal.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be. It can still be. But I've done it for most of my life to a certain extent, and still sometimes you're fasting, you're like, oh, I'm just hungry, I'm thirsty, or whatever. You cannot improve what you do not measure. That is something too. Find out a way to measure your self-discipline. Keep records, keep track, so you can improve. And then don't seek approval from others. You need to find that, not that external motivation, but that internal inspiration.
Yep.
And not seeking that from others.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's totally true. I also think to add one to that list is to start small. To take control over easy things first. Take control over how you make your bed in the morning. Take control over, just a simple thing. Just be disciplined in the small things, and that will manifest in larger things as you start to work out that muscle of just self-discipline with small things, and then that will ramp up into larger things to where before you know it, you're just rock solid.
Yeah. One last story. Whenever I think self-discipline, I think of grit. And for me, that grit is almost like it's the power, the strength to stick with what you're doing, to stay with it, and to be able to ride the waves, right? Ride the hard times. And there's a story that I always think of. It's called the farmer and the donkey. I don't know if you've ever heard that. So there was this old farmer, and he had this old donkey. And one day this donkey was out in the field, and the donkey fell into the well. And the donkey was making tons of noise and screaming in the well, and the farmer heard it from across the farm, and he came running over. And he looked down in the well, and the donkey was in the bottom of the well. It had fallen into the well. And he's like, oh, man, my donkey. He's like, man, that's my old donkey, my old friend. And he's like, man, that well is a deep well. I don't know how I'm going to get that thing out. He said, that I don't have a crane. I don't have how am I going to get this donkey out of the well? And he goes, he thought about it for a while, and the donkey was screaming in there. And he finally made the decision that he said, well, the donkey's an old donkey, and he's not really that useful around the farm. And he said, I need to fill this well in anyway. I had planned on filling this well in. And so he said, I'm just going to fill the well. And he got all of his buddies. With dirt. So he got all of his buddies from a couple other farms around, and they all brought their shovels, and they were all standing around the opening at the top of the well, and they all started to throw shovels of dirt into the well. And the donkey, who was at the bottom of the well, was standing there, and he's still freaking out. And all of a sudden, he felt dirt landing on him. And he was just, what's going on? Panicking. And he started screaming and panicking. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? This, I'm going to die. This is terrible. This is all this kind of stuff. And so the farmers, they just kept shoveling and throwing dirt into the well. Then after a while, they noticed that the donkey wasn't screaming anymore, and that it wasn't making noise. And they thought, well, that's kind of weird. We haven't thrown enough dirt in there to cover the donkey up yet. And so they looked down, and they noticed the donkey was standing there, and there was no dirt on him. And so one of the farmers picked up the shovel and got a shovel full of dirt and threw it down the hole. All the dirt landed on the donkey, on his back and on his head and on his neck. And they saw the donkey just shake off all the dirt. And then he took a step and put the dirt, packed in the dirt under his feet.
Mm-hmm.
And so they said, well, that's that. Okay. So they just kept doing it for hours. They just shoveled dirt. And every time they shoveled dirt, the donkey would just brush it, shake it off his back, and then he'd take a step. And then after a whole day of this, finally the hole had filled up enough, and the donkey had stepped on enough dirt and packed all the dirt in there that he was able to just hop out of the well, and he was able to keep
murder
walking.
his master.
Yeah, yeah,
For trying to bury him alive all day.
gave him a big old donkey kick to the jaw, and then walked away. So it's kind of like that.
Good story.
That grit, that
Tenacity.
that tenacity,
keep going.
that discipline. I think for me in that story, it wasn't so much. I mean, he didn't really have a choice, right? His discipline, his self-mastery was being able to, he's a donkey, right? But being able to think in a tough situation and analyze what's going on around him, and then to come up with a solution and to overcome a bunch of dirt being thrown on your head and having that grit to just bear through it because he trusted the plan and he trusted his mastery, his discipline to be able to make it through it, and he survived.
Or at the very least, just being stubborn as a mule and just not giving up, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
basically that's all he had to do was just not give up, and then he would continue to live on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. There's just so many aspects of self-discipline, self-mastery that you can bring into this, and really, it's kind of daunting to talk about this topic because I feel like there's so many things that you can say and so many ways to approach it, but hopefully we've given you some good tips and some good strategies on how to become more disciplined. Obviously, it's something that we are still working on, something that is on top of mind.
Have you heard about the 10,000 hour rule?
Yeah.
It's kind of like you have to work 10,000 hours. You have to,
Malcolm Gladwell, right?
yeah,
That book?
yeah, Gladwell. And so it's the book Outliers. It talks about that. It talks about how in order to master a complex skill or material, like playing the violin or whatever else it might be, you have to do that specific task for at least 10,000 hours. That's then you will be kind of considered 10,000 hours of intense practice will achieve mastery of that skill. And so I kind of was thinking to myself, I kind of did a little math. I was like, well, I'm 31 years old, right? There's 365 days in a year, and so there's 24 hours in a day. So I have lived for 271,560 hours, right? And so
what are you, a master at?
so that's exactly what it is. So I've had 30 years. I've had 271,000 hours to master something. What have I mastered in 30 years?
Insert joke.
But actually, what's funny too is
putting worms on hooks, right?
yeah. So a third of that actually is sleep. And I was looking through this study, and it was like, if at 8 years old, if you sleep 12 hours a night or whatever else, or no, 12 years old, excuse me, if you sleep at 12 years old, you sleep 12 hours a night, you have slept for 4 years straight. So if you're 24, you slept for 8 years solid of your life.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? You're just asleep for 8 years.
Yeah.
That's crazy to think about.
Unless you're 50 Cent and then you sleep when you die.
Yeah. Well, that's what Grandpa Hardy always used to say. He was like, you guys wake up, you're sleeping your life away. He'd always say that when we were on his family reunion.
Yeah. I think it's funny, though. Sometimes I think about that, just time in the context of our modern age. We think about time. The way that we think about time is so different now because like every minute has to be used. Every minute has to be used. Think about, back 50 years ago or maybe even longer than that, maybe 100 years ago, where it's like, oh, I'm going to America. I'm going to be on a 3-month voyage on a ship. And it's like, you're going to be on a ship for 3 months just to get somewhere? It's like, are you kidding me? That's 3 months of your life just to go somewhere.
You better take some books with you.
Yeah, and so like, or I'm going to travel to the West Coast, and it's going to take by carriage, and it's going to take, I don't know how many weeks. It's just like, it's insane when you think about in those times people, it was much slower. And so now everything is so fast paced that I think it's sometimes it's like, well, now if I only sleep 6 hours a night, then I can live more of my life. If I only sleep 5 hours a night, then I can live more of my life and I can do this. We're trying to cram so much into our lives, I think, because things are happening so fast that even on like a 3-hour flight across the country, we're like, oh my gosh, this is taking so long. Where it's like, slow down. I think we need to slow down sometimes and not try to be cramming so much stuff into our life. Like, yes, you have to sleep half your life because you need to recharge your body. Especially if you're working out every single day hard, your body, like the rest is the number one thing that will help you recover, your muscles recover. So, people who are talking about like, oh, I don't need sleep, I don't need this. And it's like, dude, that's just part of having a human body is it needs to rest. And like, you're basically trying to negate the fact that you are human. And when you do that, you deny your humanity. You deny like that you're a biological organism.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a great point. And things were so much slower. I never really thought about that, but it's like, we can get from here to Europe in 10 hours or 12 hours or whatever, but it's going to take 3 months to do it by steamboat or by sailboat or whatever.
Or it's like, in the olden days, you go to the town, you're like, hey, is so-and-so there? It's like, oh yeah, go up to his house. And you like travel like 2 days up to someone's house and just like hope that they're there, and it's just like,
oh, they're going to be there.
You can't send a raven or something like that.
Send a raven. So just doing a little bit more of that math. I mean, if I did, so over 30 years, if I did something for an hour a day over 30 years, that would be like 11,000 hours. So 10,000 hours-ish. So, I mean, you just kind of think like, what am I doing every day? And it takes time, right? But what am I doing every day to master myself, to self-mastery? And that could be reading a book. That could be working out. That could be meditating, playing with your kids. I mean, it could be so many different things. But am I doing something every day? Am I making thoughtful choices every single day for at least an hour? Right? Then or 2 hours or 10 hours or whatever else. So the more you do something, just think about it. The more you do something, the easier it gets.
Well, yes. I would argue though, it comes down to focused attention.
Yes.
How many guys, and this is going to be funny, but you go to like a movie theater after the movie, how many old men go in there and end up peeing all over the floor? And like, how long have they been peeing in their lives? Shouldn't they have a mastery over how to aim their pee?
In the bathroom, not like in the movie theater.
No, in the bathroom. Yeah, you go in the bathroom and they're like, why is the floor all wet in here? It's just like, it's like you'd think that after so long they would have mastered that craft, But if you're not paying attention to it, if you're just passively doing things throughout your life, then it's about focused attention. I think that's really the critical key. Because you can be doing stuff over and over again, but unless you're focused doing it, you're not going to master it.
Intentional decision-making, intentional, focused, like purposeful action.
Yeah.
I think is important there. So,
yeah. Very good. So usually when we do this, we have quotes. Ethan and I come up with quotes. We're hoping to get featured one day in like Oprah Winfrey's book of quotes or something like that. No, definitely
about
not.
15 pages each.
Yeah, exactly. So this is my quote. Self-mastery is working towards the best version of yourself on a daily basis. The more you master your passions, thoughts, actions, and emotions, the more successful and joyful you will become.
Very true. That will lead to success and joy.
It's all about mastery.
Yeah. Mine was be intentional. Action with purpose produces positive outcomes.
Action with purpose produces positive
outcomes. Be intentional. Action with purpose produces positive outcomes.
It's true.
Ethan Thomas.
Unless you're actively, purposely doing something mean, and then it's a negative outcome.
Yeah, but that wouldn't be. Well, I guess if your intention is bad, then, I mean, it could be.
There's still an outcome.
Well, it depends on who's looking at it. If my intention is bad to hurt somebody, then it would be, and I achieve that, then it would be a positive outcome for me, but a negative outcome for somebody else.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think
I'm going to pick apart your quote here. Oprah's going to be like, oh, we're going to leave that one out,
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. Like if you want, whatever you pay attention to, whatever you direct your attention to, combined with action, that will produce. So
Yeah.
very good.
For sure. All right. Well, this has been great. Hopefully, all of us together can improve our self-discipline and master our personal control in what we do and making our own decisions. So follow us on all socials, all podcast platforms, YouTube.
A.brothers.creed.
A.brothers.creed at Instagram and TikTok.
If you can, leave us a review on
Wherever you're
Apple,
listening.
Apple or Spotify. Those reviews are helpful and give us some more street cred so that other people will be like, hey, these guys are pretty good. Let's check them out. So we'd appreciate that as well. And let's build that creed together.
All right, let's do it.